Why didn't Sith simply force choke Jedi at the beginning of battles? Why didn't the Empire use more small battle cruisers or superstar destroyers? We'll cover those questions and more in today's video. Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. So we're going to look at a few of your hashtag AskEck questions, some really good lore ones today, but I also want to let you guys know we put out an awesome video on the channel last night all about Interstellar. It's over 15 minutes long. It goes into the science and the paradox at the heart of Interstellar. Highly recommend you check it out. And if you're a member of the Eckhart's Ladder Patreon, which I'll link down below, you also got the video early and ad-free. Plus, you'll support the channel at a time when it really helps. One final note, after today's video on the Patreon, I will be putting a special patron-only hashtag AskEck up. Very good, if not certain chance your question will be made into a video. But I also read every single one on the channel, so if money's tight or you're just not interested in supporting, totally understood. All right, so question number one comes from FishGaming4731, who says, why don't the Sith just choke their opponents, Jedi or anyone else, and avoid a lightsaber duel? Let me make the question broader. Why don't the Jedi and Sith use a lot more force in their battles? This is a really good question. Watch the Clone Wars, for example. At times, you'll see Anakin and Obi-Wan performing incredible feats with the Force. Other times, they're being pinned down by a squad of battle droids. Why don't they just tear them apart with the Force or rip the ceiling down on them? Well,
that's not how the Force works.
Anyway, in terms of Jedi and Sith specifically, we get the answer to this question from the Darth Bane novel, specifically book 1 of the series, Path of Destruction. I've always said that the Bane trilogy is written almost like a video game, an RPG, where you actually get to look at the stats and underlying processes of Jedi and Sith in battle. And I guess the novel breaks down something that was sort of implicitly true the whole time. I'll read directly. One of the first lessons Kazim taught students was how to build a protective shield around themselves in combat to prevent an enemy from using the Force against them. A Force-talented opponent could yank away your lightsaber, knock you off balance, or even extinguish your blade without the touch of a hand or weapon. A Force shield was the most basic and most necessary protection there was. The Bane trilogy really portrays lightsaber battles between Jedi and Sith as duels of will and power. Yes, the actual lightsaber combat is a thing which happens, but ideally, Jedi and Sith train so much in a particular style that it becomes automatic, that they fall into an almost unconscious routine. While their body is moving, with their mind and their concentration, they can try to overpower their opponent with the Force. For most beings, with some exceptions like Jason, upon reaching oneness with the Force, a being cannot draw on a limitless amount of Force energy. Certainly, the Force is more than can ever be used by one person. However, your ability to draw on the Force is still limited by your will, your concentration, which will naturally wane as you become more tired, and your skill, your experience, and honestly, your natural ability. Still, on the note of how the Force impacts combat, Path of Destruction states, guarding against the Force powers of the enemy and obscuring your own intentions required as much concentration and energy as augmenting your physical prowess or anticipating the moves of your foe. It was the unseen part of combat, the invisible battle of wills, not the obvious interaction of bodies and blades that more often than not decided the fate of a duel. And I think when you read that sentence, you can recontextualize many of the battles we see in Star Wars. How combatants like Obi-Wan and Anakin on Mustafar or Luke and Vader on the second Death Star end up breaking out of what seems to be relatively matched combat. This general point extends to the other question. A Jedi doesn't have unlimited use of the Force in most circumstances. Again, Jason achieving oneness is one example. We see other superhuman feats from Anakin Solo or Ganner Rizzotti when sacrificing themselves for the greater good, but still, generally, a Jedi has limits of their concentration, limits of their biology. You can replenish yourselves with the Force, help your muscles restore themselves, perform Force abilities, but not forever. That extends to everything from offensive abilities like a Force push to even a Jedi's capability to deflect blaster bolts. Eventually, a Jedi will be overwhelmed because their concentration will break, or they'll simply become too tired. All right, the next question is from Liam Jones, who said, why did the Empire not mass produce things like the Bellator to act as mobile gun platforms. I think it would have been good at handling smaller rebel fleets if given the correct support. Well, the fact is, the Empire didn't use the Bellator for that purpose because it would have been massively overkill, and there already existed a good option for defending planets or installations against rebel fleets: space stations. If you've played Star Wars X-Wing Alliance or really any of the X-Wing series, you'll know that the Empire employed a variety of space defense platforms, and many of them were very, very successful at repelling small, medium, or even large-scale attacks, depending on their class. On the very small end, you had XQ platforms. These were pretty good at countering the preferred tactics of the Rebel Alliance, i.e. hit-and-run attacks. XQ platforms varied in armament and complement depending on their specific subtype, but typically you'd see several turbo lasers, several laser cannons, and several squadrons of TIE fighters available at a moment's notice, usually near a planet or important installation. Often, key defensive positions would make use of several XQ platforms as well as larger defense stations. On the larger end, you had the Golan line of defense platforms. These were commonly used by the Empire and varied in terms of size and power, from less than a Star Destroyer in terms of the Golan 1 to significantly more in terms of a Golan 3. Golan 3s, for example, were 2,600 meters long and would have been packed to the brim with turbo lasers, proton torpedoes, and point defense cannons. Space stations certainly have benefits and drawbacks. Obviously, they're less mobile than starships, and it's more difficult to redeploy them across the galaxy. Usually, Golan platforms, for example, would not have hyperdrives, although they could be modified to use them, as we see during the Yuuzhan Vong War, or they could otherwise be pulled through space by tugs. But there are benefits to that as well. You don't have to sacrifice generator capacity for your engines, nor internal space. Some space stations would have been tied into the greater defense network of a planet. They may have even shared energy. They are also usually more robust. And I think from a practical standpoint, there's also a benefit to making an investment which you know cannot leave the planet no matter what happens politically. As we learn from the X-Wing series, for example, advanced or important planets like Coruscant usually had several layers of protection. The outer layer consisted of Golan defense platforms, but there was also a fleet within, as well as the planetary shield, then also ground-based defenses like cannons. So I guess a space station is different than another Star Destroyer or battle cruiser or super Star Destroyer because it is purpose-built for defense and thus excels at the role. I was hoping to do a third question, but this video is getting a little bit long. A lot of people were asking after I mentioned the Plagueis video that he was attacked and nearly assassinated by non-Force users. How could that happen? Well, that really goes back to my first point about how even the most proficient Force users have a limit to their ability. If you surprise or trick a Jedi or Sith, if you get them with enough people or the right weapons, you can kill them. It almost happens to Luke, for example, in the Thrawn duology, right at the very beginning. But that's all I've got for today. Until next time, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you. Bye-bye.